Well, welcome to Technology and Education. Today I'm Richard Smith.
And I'm Caroline Crawford. And today Richard's found a rather interesting study that he'd like to discuss, and I think it's a rather intriguing topic myself.
Yes, it should be intriguing because it concerns women, of which you are one.
Who knew?
Who knew? Who knew?
Thank you.
At any rate,
It's always nice to be reminded.
there is an article that's going to appear in the December issue of the journal Social Forces. 2013, yes. And it was done by researchers from the University of Texas at Austin and Cornell. University, yes. And it concerned the...
But it's only initial evaluation. They still want to back it up with focus group discussions and such.
Right, but
scratching the surface.
And while
scratching the surface.
And while we're scratching the surface, let's
talk about what the surface might be.
That's right. And this was a study about women in STEM careers, and STEM stands for
science, technology, engineering, mathematics.
That's right. So interestingly, I think
interesting they didn't include art in there. You know, STEM, STEAM is changed over to STEAM.
Yeah.
But okay, we'll stay on topic.
Okay, stay on topic. Arts just came in within the last year. They invented STEAM as opposed to STEM.
Which, may I say, makes no sense. It should have been there all the time, but we'll get back to topic.
Okay. So over about a 15 or 20-year period, the researchers found that women who are in STEM careers, that is, careers that involve science or technology, as you said,
or engineering or mathematics,
tend to drop out of those careers, professions, at a rate much higher than women who are in other careers, such as management, business, who knows, theater, acting, something like that. But it's not. It's also the rate at which they drop out. They drop out at about 50%. And
we're talking about younger people, or within the first 5 years, or the first 10, 15 years of their career?
Well, at the end,
is it a mid-career move?
Well, it's a mid-career out. So if they started within, at the time that they were, let's say, got out with a bachelor's or a master's degree, within about 15 years, about 15% of them have, 50% of them have dropped out. And this compares to 20% of women who drop out of careers in other professions.
In other fields. That's rather intriguing. One thing I found interesting about the study is that women specifically, who hold higher level degrees, who have achieved higher level degrees in the STEM area, are dropping out at a different rate than people with lower degrees, lower level degree achievements.
At even a higher rate, which was really interesting, because you would suspect that if a person had studied even more for entry into a STEM career, that person would want to stay in that career.
I have so many different curiosities about this, but I don't want to skew the discussion by stating that, specifically because there haven't been focus groups by these researchers yet to find out the reasoning behind why people may have left earlier than later. Because as we had talked about, as had been mentioned in the research study, initially the traditional aspects associated with women's roles may or may not actually have something to do with the viability of the field, maintaining field.
At first, or you would think that the women were dropping out because they were starting families. But the research indicated something else.
Well, I wouldn't think that, but I suppose traditionally people would.
Well, if you were trying to think of reasons why women would drop out of a career that's lucrative and in general rewarding, one of the rationales that would immediately pop into mind is that they're going to have a family. They want to have children. And
now, see, I wouldn't think that at all. I would think it would be more of a cultural issue.
Well, you might...
Something going on within the business realm that is a cultural issue that is not
right.
warm and welcoming to a female.
Right. But on the other hand, the first thing that most people would think about, aside from you, who are extremely liberal and intelligent...
Oh, that is just not true!
And the finding was that no...
I'm an independent, just so everybody knows.
The finding was that no, it's not because of having children. They're dropping out before they have children. So just the mere fact that, or the thought that they're having children, and that's the reason is no, that proved to be wrong.
I would suggest, without any frame of reference, that it's a social issue. There's a cultural concern going on within that environment. Much as within academia, it has been a slow process wherein women are more welcomed and women's desires for work-life balance are more appropriately met within academia. More so than it was, let's say, 20, 30 years ago.
Well, interestingly enough, women tend to stay in the field of this, in STEM fields, according to this study, if they're married to a man who is also in the STEM fields.
Yeah. It's difficult.
So-
It's difficult when you have a mate who is outside of your field of expertise. They just don't get what you're talking about, and it again may be a social aspect of why someone chooses to stay versus chooses to leave a field.
Yeah, and there are a number of reasons that you could, beyond the ones that we just rejected or were rejected by the study, and
Even though they haven't done focus groups, they have no idea.
Right.
This is all just scratching the surface.
they have
type
no
study.
idea. But one of the
But they started following. It's a longitudinal study. They started following these people from, what was it, 14 years old to 20-something-year-olds?
Yeah, it was
back in 1970, was it 9? I want to say it was
Yeah.
1979. So they've been following them for a long time.
It's a long time. And one of the ideas that was postulated was that
Ooh,
perhaps
big word, well done.
thank you. that perhaps men who are in the science, technology, and engineering and mathematics fields are more traditional than men who are in other fields, and because of that, that may be something that's pressuring the women, or was pressuring the women to drop out. Also, that women in these fields tend to have a lot of teamwork, and that the women may be not, because the men are traditional, it may be that they weren't, their ideas were not taken seriously in teamwork. And this is all to...
Well, wait a minute. These are all assumptions, and
Well-
that's interesting. Your first assumption, though, perhaps because, as it was suggested in the study results, women who are married to males who are already in the field, that may not be an appropriate assumption, because the understanding of the men in the field as to what is expected of the career expectations may be more on target towards supporting the female than someone who is outside of that field, understanding what it takes in order to be successful in your career
Right. But
for
the,
a female.
but the
And
thing
so
is...
traditionally, it may not be the people in the field who are too traditional. It may be the gentlemen outside of
That's-
the field
that's something
who
else.
don't have
Right.
appropriate expectations of the women's
But that's
career
something else
objectives.
that's something else that can be explored. But in
I'm
this
just throwing it
instance,
out there because you said, well, here's an assumption.
But in
That
this-
is an assumption, and
but in this
perhaps not
instance-
correct. Let's look at it from a
right.
different
But
perspective.
in this instance, one of the assumptions that were coming out, the things to explore in this study, was that perhaps it was the teamwork where women, they might not have been, their ideas might not have been taken seriously, and that was one of the things that was driving them to leave the field. That's just something
That's interesting.
to be explored. Now, the other thing is that this study is
Well, I
over
must say, I
time.
do notice that, at least in my career, whenever I've been a part of a committee or some type of group of people, usually because I was one of the younger people in the group, or because I was a female, I don't know which, maybe both, I was always the one that was tasked with doing one could perceive it as more menial jobs, like taking minutes or something like that,
Yeah,
maintaining
well,
notes.
It's perhaps, or perhaps just the person who's lowest on the totem pole winds up with that.
And that could
but-
be as well.
But one of the interesting things is that since this study was taken over a number of years, whether this finding is going to hold is another story, because now
It's a
women...
totally different world, totally different
Yes,
culture.
there are a lot of women, for example, in medical schools, which is a STEM career. At least 50% of students in medical schools are now women. So whether they're going to drop out is open to question, and
Well, we also have totally different generational
right,
attitudes.
and also to see if this floats over into other areas such as engineering and technology, and that point will have to be our closing point.
You
and-
just knew I was going
and
to
I-
say something about the laws that are in place,
and
but
made,
I'll leave it
and
alone.
I made that closing point.
for that specific reason.
You've been watching Technology and Education Today. I'm Richard Smith.
And I'm Caroline Crawford. Bye! I just couldn't help it.
No.